Moonshine Jesus, nobody in the sky. Moonshine Jesus, baby, don't ride. Moonshine Jesus, a surprising delight. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello, and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're glad that you have joined us for yet another episode. I'm even doubly glad that my good friend David has joined us because this would be really boring without him. How's it going,
And the
David?
crowd goes wild. Yeah, so actually the crowd is cheering for my massive cup of coffee that I have right now.
Mine too.
I have what appears to be the equivalent of 4 shots of espresso to get through before I'm going to be fully functional as a human being. So, Mark, you may have to carry this first segment of the show.
Well, I'm just impressed that you can, at some point, get to being a fully functional human being. I've not figured that out yet.
You know, it's all relative.
It is. Hey, let's get straight.
As they teach you in seminary, it's all relative.
It is all relative. Let's get straight to business, though. We need to talk a little about Wild Goose, man. I know we've talked a little bit about it so far, but
Absolutely.
there's more deets. We've learned some deets.
That's right. So last year, the only show that we had was a midnight Moonshine Jesus show.
Which we
and
will do
for
again.
those of you who don't function well at night, you might not have been able to make it. We've got great news for
Yes,
you.
indeed we
You
do.
can see us before bedtime this time.
That's right. Well before bedtime, as it turns out.
Yeah, we're going to be on the a podcast stage. We're really excited to,
They're calling
to
it
get
the.
to actually be official contributors this go round. We even had to do a bio,
We
Mark.
did. They call it the Goose Cast this time, though. So when you're looking for it, it's called Goose Cast.
Okay.
And
Does that
so
mean
that's
we have to
going
come up with a new logo?
No, we don't. They'll have to do it. I don't know.
Okay.
And so it's going to be a stage with various podcasters, one of which is us. Our time slot is Friday. I believe it's at 4:30.
Okay.
So,
So it's not going to be all podcasts happening all at the same time.
oh, that would be interesting. Just a stage full of people. No.
It'd be like Pentecost. It'd be like Pentecost.
Right.
Um,
No, so ours is at 4:30 on the Goosecast stage. We will be giving out free handouts with some let's just say a logoed item. Let's just leave it at that.
That's right. We are not giving out handouts like mimic that you got in high school and elementary school. We are giving out actual cool stuff that
We're
you
handing
will
out tracks, man. Free
forever.
handouts.
I will also have my headshots to autograph for anyone who would.
Oh, good. I want one of those. Sign me up. And also, we will be having our midnight show. That same night at Friday. We will try to have it way, way in the back like we did last time. You basically go to the end and look for our banner.
Mark has to pay me to stay up that late.
I do. I pay him in coffee, but it's the same thing. I mean, it costs me money. It costs me money.
I would rather have that.
But listen.
That's what I'm going to spend my cash on anyway.
Here's the cool thing. So one of the best parts, no, not one of the best part of our show, as everybody knows, is the music.
Absolutely. And, when we do live shows, I mean, sometimes that's missing, and that's sad.
That is sad. However,
but not this time.
Not this time, right? So Randy Creeth, who does our drops in the middle of our show, is going to be with us live for both shows.
Right.
Playing live music. It should be just a blast. I can't begin to tell you how excited I am.
There's 2 great things about that. One, Randy's excellent, and I love his drops for our show,
Right.
and he will probably be able to flourish and embellish them a little bit.
Oh, I suspect he'll bring some other music too.
Yeah. 2, when we run out of interesting thing to say, we can just say, "Hey, Randy, play something."
Throw it to Randy.
Everybody wins.
People don't realize
wins,
they think
Randy wins. We win. It's great.
People think, "Oh, it's so cool." I think that we're going to be the only podcast with live music.
Except now that you told everybody, now everybody's going to.
Well, what they realize, it's really not about being the only one with live music. It's more about having a safety net. We're prepared just in case. I tell you what, one last thing before we move on. A special deal to our listeners. If you want to go to Wild Goose, haven't signed up yet, we can offer you a discount code. Going to be 25% off. So just enter Goosecast 2016, Goosecast 2016 when you check out, and we'll be giving you a 25% discount, and that way we can get you there and give you one of these lovely logoed items.
Well, and then what I'd like you to do is take that 25% that you saved and just put it in Mark and I's palms when you
right.
see it.
That's right. Just say, thank you. Here's your cut.
Because that will enable us to see more movies and do more reviews of things that we have to pay for, right, Mark?
That's exactly right. Because I tell you, last night I went to see X-Men Apocalypse in 3D IMAX. The movies are getting expensive, man.
Yeah, movies are getting expensive. Luckily, here in Hendersonville, North Carolina, the 3D movies cost the same as the regular old movies.
Okay, so, that's nice.
I got to see it in 3D. It was not IMAX, but honestly, Mark, I saw this movie.
Yeah.
And going into it, looking at the trailers and all that, I was thinking, meh.
Right.
I came out of the movie really digging it. Really, really digging it. I was impressed. I was surprised. I thought it was going to kind of be a little too bloated, and it was a little bloated, but it was a lot better than I expected.
It's interesting. I had a sort of a similar experience.
Okay.
I left realizing that I frequently kind of got caught up in the movie and wasn't really like, we knew that we were going to be doing a podcast on it. So, when you watch a movie knowing that you're going to be talking about it, you kind of watch it with this second level of dialogue going on in your head sometimes. I found myself dropping that all the time and just getting caught up in the movie. Now, I left loving the movie, but we'll talk about it. There were some things that I realized when I started breaking it down. I was kind of wondering, why did I love the movie? So we'll talk about that.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know about X-Men and don't know about this movie,
for shame. Oh, sorry. That's not where you're going, was it?
We should probably apologize for talking about a comic book thing again. So we're sorry for all you people who don't like it.
We should say right off the bat, our first segment here, our first round, spoiler free.
Absolutely.
Spoiler free. So listen up.
No spoilers. You don't have to turn your dial down. On the next round, we'll talk about spoilers and all that, and you can just fast forward through that.
That's right.
Yeah, so don't even worry about that. So we're going to be spoiled. So the movie follows a villain who, in typical comic parlance is Apocalypse. His name is Apocalypse, and that's what the movie's named after. Although he's named some weird ancient fake god thing going on.
Although he claims to have been named Elohim and a number of other things.
Right. He takes he says that he's been named Elohim, Ra, and all these ancient god names, and who has all these incredible powers to destroy the world, basically. And he develops the 4 mutants who he imbues with extra powers, and they're his 4 horsemen. And so it's a battle for the end of the world, so to speak. It's very, very dire, very. The setup for the film sounds hokey when you say it out loud, doesn't it?
It really does. It sounds way too over the top to have ever been something that anyone would buy into. That is for sure.
But I thought it actually worked in a lot of ways. I kept going through the film as I'm watching and knowing the movie is called Apocalypse, going, if I know the actual Greek for apocalypse, it means awakening and, being awakened. And so it's interesting to see this image of pop culture apocalypse being the destruction of the world. And if you look at how a lot of people interpret Revelation, it's not, it wouldn't be a unbiblical vision for what the end of the world might look like.
I think that's fair. I think that's definitely fair.
And to think about that being one of the things that God does, because Apocalypse, the villain, casts himself as a god, and he disarms the nuclear weapons from the world and all this other kind of stuff that's happening that you think is good, and you can watch this and go, this looks a little bit like Left Behind. This looks a little bit like how many Christians understand what Revelation or the end of the world is going to be, and it's kind of disturbing to see that happening in the role of an evil villain. It should make us go, huh, that's a little disconcerting.
Well, I think that's one of the things I enjoyed about the movie is that this character that casts itself as God, and even in the storyline setup, there's some ways to say this may have that's how humanity may have began understanding who God is and what God is through this character in some ways.
Right.
But the great thing was while the character is mostly evil, there's this good intent behind the evil. You know what I mean? It's like to free the other mutants from the oppression that they're experiencing, to get rid of the nuclear missiles, which we probably okay. So there's a little tiny spoiler here, but that's not that big of a spoiler.
That's not a spoiler. That happened like in the middle of the movie.
That's still in the movie. But it's not that big of a spoiler. It doesn't have a lot to do with the whole storyline, and so it's not that big of a story.
No.
So I like that about the character. I like the fact that there's this the end results are evil, but the kind of thoughts behind it are kind of a positive, at least in terms of freeing people from oppression.
The impulse is a protective impulse, almost a twisted caretaker impulse.
And it sets up this really interesting question of, how do we overcome oppression? You basically have two sets of mutants, one who wants to use force and violence and destruction, and one that feels like it's better served by working with folks who are doing oppression and trying to figure out how to show them that the oppression is incorrect and shouldn't be going on.
Right. It's kind of a battle between empathy and violence in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But were there parts in the movie that you thought that you just didn't get with, or you? I mean, there were.
Like I said,
really bloated. The part in the facility, in the woods, where they're captured for a little while,
right,
I thought was completely to service the independent Wolverine movie. Period. Like there was no reason for that to be
right.
That.
Wolverine's appearance in the movie. Oh, spoiler alert!
No. That's it.
It's in the trailer, isn't it?
It's in one of the trailers.
Okay. Is completely there just for the new Wolverine movie. There's no other reason for it to be there, really. Except,
and in a movie,
and also we should say there's a tag at the end, so stay to the very end of the credits.
In a movie that clocks in at 2.5 hours already,
right.
To put a bloated scene in there that services another movie, it was really, as a moviegoer, was really frustrating.
Yeah, well, like I said,
the movie was tight and the movie was interesting, and I felt like that really slowed it down and junked it up.
Well, I say, like I said, I left realizing how much I enjoyed it, and I got lost in it a number of times. But I also realized when I started thinking about it, man, I would say the whole middle, and when I say the whole middle, I mean about an hour and 45 minutes of the middle. I felt like the pacing was horrific. I mean, in part, and this is a necessary thing based on the other movies if you've seen them, in part, this movie is about getting the gang back together. And they spent so much freaking time doing that, and I felt like it killed the pacing.
You know what I wish this movie was, and what I wanted more of in this movie? I wanted more Magneto. I wanted lots more Magneto.
Did you really?
I thought they've done such a good job with that character.
They casted him really well.
And making him a complex villain. And not a one-dimensional. I think he's the most.
Did you really want more? I mean, there's the whole scene with the family, the scene in the woods with the family. I mean, I felt like he got as much screen time as the professor did.
See, I don't find the professor all that interesting. The professor's very one-dimensional. I feel like all the characters are very one-dimensional in a lot of superhero movies, and I feel like with Magneto, you get a really conflicted, more three-dimensional character than like these are the powers and this is how he uses them. Like Professor Xavier is like the embodiment of good, and Magneto is the embodiment of conflicted self. And I don't know, I like that. I like that struggle. There were maybe a little too many echoes of Luke Skywalker talking to Darth Vader when Charles and Magneto were talking with one another about feeling good in him. But I thought the struggle was well done. And I liked that a whole lot in the context of this film about being that bridge and that middle piece between how does empathy work and how does violence work.
Which is interesting because anyone who's seen the original movies or read the comics know that Magneto ultimately becomes kind of the full voice of violent resistance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want there to be the Magneto biopic that really delves into that.
Right. I tell you what, let's wrap this up. Like we said, we tried to stay mostly spoiler-free here. Next segment, we're going to go a little deeper into the movie, talk some of the theological. We've talked a little bit about that, but we're going to go much deeper talk a little bit about the theology in it, and it will be just chock full of spoilers, I imagine.
Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Won't you shine a light?
Hello, and welcome back to round 2 of the Moonshine Jesus show. This is our spoiler round. So if you don't want to know the ending of this movie, because we're going to talk about the ending of this movie, you should probably fast forward about, 8 minutes, 5 minutes?
Yeah, I tell you what, we're going to leave a blank right in just a second, and I'll tell you at what minute that you can come back in, right here.
Okay.
25 minutes and 20 seconds.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the end of this movie because the end of this movie is fantastic. I was kind of on the fence about this movie until the ending, and then the ending happened, and I was like, this is amazing, because the ending of the movie plays out in a psychic battle and in a physical battle all at the same time. Yeah. And what you wind up with is a battle between two gods, two images of God in a way. One is a divine male, which is violent and retributive, and one is a divine feminine, which is life-giving and holistic. And it's like, I was watching this and I was like,
to a degree, because right there, when Professor X is like, own who you are and let it be and just go for it, and she really becomes just.
And he's talking to Jean Grey.
Jean Grey, and she becomes very destructive at that point.
She becomes the Phoenix. She becomes she becomes Phoenix at that moment.
Right.
And it's destructive, but she's not destroying anything but like the incarnation of evil in the world.
Right. Well, it's ultimately it's destructive in a new life kind of way, and all new life is destructive.
Yeah.
End of life begets beginning of life, and beginning of life begets end of life. It's it's the circle of life.
So you've got Apocalypse, the main villain, who's bent on just completely destroying the earth and wiping the face clean. And it is this idea that healing comes through destruction.
Right.
And then you have Jean Grey, who steps out, incredibly powerful and embodying her power in a way that she hasn't yet.
Exactly.
And destroying that. And then the first thing she does is she brings Xavier back to life, who's kind of this embodiment of good and empathy in the world.
Exactly.
And it's this powerful image in a film that has been bent on destroying and killing everything, that the first thing that the new heroine does is bring someone to life. Right. It's this powerful, evocative image, which fits with the Phoenix and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
But it makes me think about our masculine ideas of power and our feminine ideas of power. Mm-hmm. It makes me think about images of divine female and divine male. And
it's really easy to get into stereotypes here, and we're not trying to do that.
Sure.
As much as use it as a device for defining kind of some broad brushstrokes of sexuality and perspective.
Well, I mean, it is a comic book movie. It deals in broad brushstrokes.
Right. Of course it does. One of the interesting things I found about that was that the image of a phoenix is life from ashes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Apocalypse uses dirt to destroy everything.
Right.
And I love that kind of that tension between the two images of life from the ashes, from the dirt, from the dust, or death from the ashes, from the dirt, from the dust.
Exactly. There's destruction around you. There's pain and there's suffering around you. And what do you want to bring forth?
You make choices. I mean, ultimately, we look at dirt and we don't give it a lot of value. But they're able to. But we see both destruction and life coming from them, and it speaks to choices we make about everything in life. Is that we have choices about how we can bring about good or bad, death or life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, an Apocalypse uses the dirt as a weapon. Like that's the primary weapon.
Right.
One of the things that I want to talk about, I want to get your thoughts on this because I found it fascinating, was to talk about the name of the film. And I know I mentioned this in the previous segment. So the name of the film is Apocalypse, right?
Right.
And in the entire movie, I'm snarkily, Bible nerd, criticizing it because it
Awakening.
frames apocalypse in terms of destructions rather than awakening. And I'm like, oh, you bought into the Left Behind thing. But they never refer to him as Apocalypse in the movie. Ever, right?
Correct.
And at the very end, the last words out of our villain's mouth is all has been revealed when Jean Grey is turning into the Phoenix. And suddenly there was like this light bulb, and I was going, is this what the film is named after? The Awakening of the Phoenix. And that's the Apocalypse. In my head, I'm going, if Bryan Singer, the director, did this, he is brilliant.
Right. I kind of feel like that is what was going on. It was an apocalypse in that it was the ending of hiding. It was the ending of not owning who you are and living into it.
Because that's a strong theme, like throughout the whole film with many of the mutants, is this idea of being revealed for who you are and embracing that.
Exactly. And that's a theme throughout X-Men, whether you're reading the comics or other movies. It's always been about this: do I hide this gift or do I claim it and proclaim it?
Right. And so when the Phoenix erupts, and you've got this 5,000 year old mutant being going, this is all has been revealed.
Yeah,
it's this foreshadowing of something that's going to come next.
Right.
The awakening of the Phoenix within Jean Grey, which completely changes kind of some of who she is. But I was thinking in terms of the idea of apocalypse, that this whole movie was building towards this revelation and this awakening as the significant moment.
It is. Think about it. It definitely is. And the final tip of the hat or wink to us was there at the end when Mystique, because she spent the entire movie and people keep commenting to her that she's not she's lost her blue, that she's keeping
she's not in her natural
she looks
form.
Human, more like what we expect, and people keep commenting about it and she just says I feel better about this. But then at the very end she changes back to her natural self, says something to the others about that kind of thing. For me, about doing the same. For me, that was his kind of his last. Yep, this was about awakenings.
Yeah. So the other thing I found incredibly moving and compelling was when Charles Xavier is fighting the villain who we call Apocalypse, and they're connected, and his primary weapon against him is to make him feel the pain of humankind. So his primary weapon is empathy. He forces the villain to feel all that he feels. And you could talk about the weaponization of empathy, but you can also talk about how that kind of exposure and embrace of pain really can be.
And I would say in that case, it's not a weapon.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more about trying to teach and trying to show and trying to expose someone, because I mean, I think the lesson there is just that typically when someone is upset or mad or hateful or vengeful or oppressive toward someone else, a lot of the times you find that they really have never had a lot of experience with the particular person or the kind of person that they are oppressing.
Yeah, well, and that goes to talk about the pain of empathy, that it might not be a weapon, but it can be painful, especially when you enter into that and into a way that you had not previously been aware of, all the damage and all the pain that you've done. It's a fascinating move within the film to have Charles Xavier embrace that connection with this supervillain, and to put the supervillain in touch with all of humanity's pain, and you get a sense of the weight of that. And that, I mean, there are definitely religious connections to that. If you think about Christianity and traditional notions of Jesus or God entering into the world and suffering with humanity, and this idea entering into our pain with empathy, the idea of God being empathic with humanity.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely a second level of what was going on there, and it's important to recognize. I think from a writing standpoint, it's kind of an interesting movie, and we're going to wrap it up here, but it had these very theological, philosophical, sophisticated kind of and then this very sophomoric dialogue. So it's really interesting, the kind of the dichotomy there of two different things. But anyway, we do, I think, both recommend this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. There are some lines in there that you're like, really, you wrote that down? But yeah, I think definitely watch the movie for the themes and for the broader strokes, but not for the details and dialogue.
Absolutely. Welcome back to round 3 of the Moonshine Jesus Show. This is our AMA segment, and we have plenty of very interesting questions to field here. David, this is probably one of my favorites. It came from Deborah Lynch. It was way back when we first started doing AMA, and it's just
so we should apologize. Sorry, we're just now getting to it.
That's right, but it was too good to not bring back at some point. So here's my question for you. You ready?
Yep.
Does God have parents? And that's just the first half of the question. Does God have parents? And do they know he was playing with his chemistry set in his bedroom?
You know, what do you think is going to happen if I answer this, Mark? I'm either going to get Steve Brock from the Episcopal Church, or we're going to lose listeners. One of them.
Hey, don't dismiss the chance of both.
Not an either or. We're a both and or.
It's a great question. We're just going to leave that one there, I think, for the audience to decide.
No, I think the question is its own answer. It's like a Buddhist cone.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll buy that.
We live into the questions as progressives, Mark. We don't always have to have the answer.
Yes, that is correct. Sometimes the question is much more satisfying than the answer.
Okay, AMA savant, Leo Holzer.
Oh, yeah, Leo, man. He's come up with great questions.
Yeah, I feel like Leo gets our AMA stuff, and he's given us this great cache of stuff to work with. Actually, I want to know your answers to all of these. What's your favorite single rock recording and why?
God, that's hard. All right, it's going to come down to 2 albums.
Okay.
The why is almost identical on them.
Yeah.
They were some of my earliest albums that I purchased myself. And I was just like crazy about them partly because I purchased them. So one would be Kiss's Rock and Roll All Over.
That's a great album.
Amazing, and I love it.
That's a great album.
And that second one's a double album, Styx Paradise Theater. And I still, to this day, am listening to the vinyls. Matter of fact, on my turntable right now is Kiss's Rock and Roll All Over.
What's hilarious is our age difference is going to show up here, because I'm very similar in the reasons why I'm picking these, but they're from many years later.
They're the ones I was listening to when I was in college.
Yeah, I was going to say Metallica's a Black Album.
Okay, yeah.
And Soundgarden, Super Unknown.
Yep, college, pretty much college. Yeah, thank you.
Which was me in high school and middle school. And
I just want to say that it's great that you've been able to get back to pointing out how old I am. I appreciate it.
I know, right? So, no, I have actually another question. This is not one of Leo's, but this is an AMA from me. Because I want to answer this. What is your first album that you ever bought yourself with your own money?
That was Kiss's Rock and Roll Over.
Rod Stewart Unplugged.
Was it really? Unplugged? Oh, it couldn't have been Eric Clapton Unplugged? Oh, Rod Stewart Unplugged.
My buddy, like, we worked together to win one of those selling competitions at school. And so they took us to the mall, and my parents had given me like $20, and I bought Rod Stewart Unplugged. Okay.
Fantastic.
All right. Last one. What is your red button issue?
Social justice.
Interesting. Mine is intolerance.
Okay. Kind of similar veins there.
Yeah, that's and that's it. We've got tons more questions, but I kind of want to save some of Leo's for later dates. So I think maybe we should just let folks enjoy the smooth, delicious tunes of Freddie.
that they planned this so well. Moonshine and Jesus, yes, that is the way to get us to give up our souls every day.